I want to talk to Mets fans. I want to talk to Yankee fans. I want to talk to Dodger fans. In addition, if you're a Blue Jays fan or a Giants fan, how about a Tampa Rays fan? Let's get down to brass tacks. What happens when an owner gets on a private plane and goes to see a player and an agent? Word came out yesterday from very reliable sources that Steve Cohen would be flying to Southern California next week to meet with Scott Boras and Juan Soto. When you go meet a player who's a free agent, there is a specific way to do that meeting. You prepare for it because each player's different, and you count on your GM to have spoken to the agent prior to you getting involved as a president or owner so that you know which tack is the right way to go. So, for example, if it's a middle reliever who you want to sign, you're going there to talk about opportunity. You're going there to talk about role. When it is a starting pitcher, you're going to talk about your pitching coach, your approach, the division. Every free agent wants to hear about money, so that's not a differentiating factor. But when you're going to meet Boras and Soto and you're Steve Cohen, there are about 7 points that you have to make sure you make in this meeting, because it's not just going and sitting down and saying, all right, Juan, my name is Steve, and I'll give you whatever you want. Here is a blank check. Fill in the years, fill in the amount of money, and we're done. That's not what Soto and Boras want to hear. Steve Cohen is going to have a checklist. The first thing that he has to do is make it so that Juan Soto cannot leave the room without knowing that him being a New York Met is the only logical choice he can make for this year, for next year, and for 20 years from now. Why do I say that? Because you may remember what Paul George said about the Clippers when he signed there as a free agent, how he felt as a Clipper before he signed as a free agent with Philadelphia. He said, we always felt like we were second-class citizens to the Lakers. There's been something going on in New York for decades where people believe that the Mets are the second-class citizen to the Yankees. Steve Cohen wants to change that. And he wants Juan Soto to be the sun of that change, the center of that change. He's telling Juan Soto and Scott Boras that by the time you are done and you retire and go into the Hall of Fame as a New York Met, the New York Mets will be the team of New York. You don't realize this, Juan, but when we win, and when we win a World Series, this city, this area embraces us in a way that you began to feel as a Yankee, but you don't realize the depth of the loyalty of Met fans. And I'm not here to win one World Series ring with you. That's not enough for me. I don't want two. Over the course of your career, I want you to retire with more rings than Jorge Posada. I want you to have 6 rings, maybe 7. If you're here for the rest of your career, I expect that we can win every other year, if not more. You want to talk about dynasties? You want a ring with the Nationals? Not a dynasty. Yankees, not a dynasty. Back in 98 and 2000, they were by winning 3 in a row. That's dynasty. What we are going to do with the Mets, and that you are going to be a part of, is making the Mets the number 1 team in New York. In addition, what he'll tell Juan is that you're comfortable in New York. You don't have to move from where you lived. The commute to Citi Field, you talk about that. What is going to be around that ballpark, the excitement of how Braves players feel when they go to Truist Park and see the life around the ballpark, which is so different than when a ball player goes to a ballpark that has no development around it, and it feels like you're just walking into a really nice thing in the middle of a bunch of not nice surroundings. The vision that Steve Cohen has. In addition, Steve Cohen is talking to Scott Boras during the meeting and saying, Juan, can you imagine a lineup where you are in it? Yeah, you had Judge and Stanton. Let me tell you who you have here. you have Pete Alonso. You've got to make it clear, if you're Steve Cohen, to Scott Boras, that signing Juan Soto doesn't mean I don't want Pete Alonso. I want them in the 2 and 3 hole of my lineup. In addition, you want to talk to Juan Soto about what it means to be committed to a team the way Steve Cohen will say, I am committed to this team. He's going to point to the Bryce Harper contract, the 13 years, no opt-outs, no trade clause, meaning a no trade clause, which means you are signing up to be a Met. And then Steve Cohen, if he's smart, will end with what Juan Soto and Scott Boras really wanted to hear about, which is, we are going to make you the highest paid player in the history of Major League Baseball. It is true that Shohei Ohtani got $700 million, but it's more like $440 over 10 years. We're going to beat that. We're going to give you more than 10 years. We believe that you will be a productive player until you're 40. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we need 5 meetings to get to know each other, or that you're going to take my deal and shop it, because what we're offering you is a deal that no one will be able to match, willing to match, because it's not just about the years and the money. It's also about the opportunity. The opportunity to win in New York as a member of the Mets will be the single greatest thing that you accomplish in your career. When you are standing in Cooperstown 5 years after you end your career with the Mets, you will be able to talk about what it meant to be the catalyst of a sea change in New York baseball. Think about that from an ego standpoint. And Steve Cohen has to play to Boris's ego. You're going to set the record. Has to play to Juan Soto's ego. You're going to get paid the most. And then has to appease Juan Soto in terms of winning, because he's already won 1 ring, but he needs and wants more to go down as the best in history, which is the type of player that he is. He has the opportunity to be the best and the most successful and winningest player in history. The type of player like the Yankees had with Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle and that number of rings. What will be interesting is that if Scott Boras wants to separate Alonso and Soto, or if he wants to put them together in a package along with the starting pitcher like a Blake Snell or a Corbin Burns. Remember, Boras, in addition to being loyal to Soto, has a lot of other players he's thinking about. And the Mets are a huge, huge team in terms of a bailout team for Boras. A huge, huge team who is willing to pay players that will make Boras look good for representing his players. Boras will come equipped to that meeting with a book that will explain that Juan Soto was the difference in the Mets making the World Series and winning the World Series last year. But Boras is going to have to be careful, because Boras wants to sell Cohen other of his players. So he can't say alone that Soto brings the World Series. He has to say that Soto plus 1 to 2 starting pitchers and your first baseman, that's how you get to a World Series. So 3 people in the meeting, 3 different agendas. In terms of comfort, you do it on the home field. When you do a meeting like this for a free agent, you ask the agent, where do you want to meet? They may meet at Boras Corp. They may get a suite at the hotel where Steve Cohen will stay, unless he stays at his place. It could be at Juan Soto's place. It could be anywhere. Word will get out where the meeting is. There will be media that will find out, because it is of huge interest, and it will be incumbent upon Boras to leak certain things about the meeting in order to lather up the market for his other players. Coming out of the meeting, would it surprise you that there would be leaks that Steve Cohen is not just looking for a 1-pack, he's looking for a buy 3, get 6 rings free? Because that would enable him to have leverage with the other large market teams who are looking for the same players who Scott represents. So this meeting is going to be an interesting one. We will obviously be able to talk more about it as word comes out. But this is Steve Cohen's chance to accomplish what he's wanted since he got in the game, and that is to get a generational player to help him win rings. I think it's time. I've been waiting to do this, Coca, but I'm doing it. Wait to see is when we tell you something's going to happen. If it does, okay. If not, I have not taken a position on where Juan Soto will sign until now. There is very little chance that Steve Cohen will fail. When he wants something, he gets it. This is his moment, and he won't let it pass. Juan Soto is going to sign with the New York Mets. You gotta believe.